Hi everybody, it's Alexandra Eala here. I just wanted to thank you all so much for the support. The atmosphere these past few days have been completely amazing.
The Philippines tennis princess is taking over the world, and she's only just getting started. Let me ask you something. When was the last time a single tennis player brought an entire nation to a complete standstill? When was the last time a 20-year-old girl with a left-handed forehand made the world's biggest tennis stars look like they were playing in slow motion? When was the last time a wildcard, ranked 140th in the world, walked into one of the most prestigious tournaments on the planet and dismantled not one, not two, but 3 Grand Slam champions back to back to back? If you are a Filipino, you already know exactly what we are talking about. And if you do not, strap in, because the story of Alexandra Eala is the kind of story that only comes around once in a generation. This is Court Vision Plus, and today we are diving deep into the rise, the records, the heartbreak, and the absolutely enormous potential of the girl they are now calling the tennis princess of the Philippines. Let us go back to March 2025, because that is where everything changed. Not just for Eala. Not just for Philippine tennis. But for the entire conversation about who belongs among the elite in women's tennis. Alexandra Eala walked into the Miami Open as a wildcard, ranked 140th in the world, having never beaten a top 40 player in her life. Read that again. 140th. Wildcard. And what did she do? She did not just win a match. She did not just pull off a quiet upset in the first round and go home. She went on a run that shook the entire tour to its foundations. She first ousted 2017 French Open champion Jelena Ostapenko. Then she knocked out reigning Australian Open champion Madison Keys, who was ranked number 5 in the world. 2 Grand Slam champions. Gone. Just like that.
4K50. This would be...
But Eala was not done. Not even close. Because up next in the quarterfinals was the most formidable player women's tennis had seen in number 2 seed Iga Swiatek. A 5-time Grand Slam winner. A player who had spent years absolutely dominating the tour. A player who had famously lost to someone ranked outside the top 100 only twice before in her entire career. Twice. In all those years on tour. Eala demolished Swiatek 6-2, 7-5 in 1 hour and 37 minutes to reach her first ever WTA semifinal. The arena erupted. Millions of Filipinos watching from thousands of miles away erupted. And Eala? She stood there on court, looking up at the scoreboard, somewhere between tears and disbelief. When asked about her reaction after that final point dropped in, she admitted she simply could not decide whether to scream or cry, because she had been so locked into the moment, point by point, that it was genuinely hard to process what had just happened. And that right there, that composure, that ability to stay locked in while the world is spinning around you, that is what separates the great ones from everyone
Alexandra
else.
Eala's dream
How did she actually
run
beat Swiatek?
continues.
Her left-handed forehand was the star of the show, firing winners from all corners of the court and keeping Swiatek consistently flat-footed with deep, aggressive returning from inside the baseline. Swiatek won just 2 points behind her second serve for the entire match, an absolutely staggering number that tells you everything about how brutally effective Eala's returning was on that day. Swiatek herself admitted after the match that Eala went all out, played flat, and was relentlessly aggressive with shots that felt like they were coming from nowhere. When Iga Swiatek is standing in a post-match press conference trying to explain what just happened to her, you know something truly special went down on that court. There was a surreal layer to all of this too, because 2 years before that Miami match, Eala had graduated from the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, the very same ceremony where Iga Swiatek was the commencement speaker. Student beats the mentor's guest of honor at a WTA 1000 quarterfinal. You genuinely could not write this stuff. And speaking of the Nadal Academy, Eala had moved to Spain at just 13 years old to train there, and Tony Nadal, Rafael Nadal's uncle and legendary former coach, was actually sitting in her box during the Swiatek match. The family that helped build one of the greatest champions in the history of tennis was courtside watching this Filipino teenager dismantle the world number 2. That detail alone should give you chills. As a direct result of that historic Miami run, on March 31, 2025, Eala became the first Filipino player in history to break into the WTA Top 100, entering the rankings at number 75. Let that sink in. The Philippines had never had a tennis player crack the world's top 100. Not in the Open era. Not ever. And here was this 19-year-old, who had been quietly grinding at the Nadal Academy since she was barely a teenager, doing it in the most dramatic fashion imaginable at one of the biggest tournaments in the world. The Malacanang Palace issued a statement celebrating her achievement. Social media in the Philippines came to a complete stop. Trending topics, news programs, everything was Eala. A country that has produced world-class athletes in boxing, basketball, and weightlifting was now watching one of their own standing toe-to-toe with the best tennis players on the planet. But who is this young woman, exactly? Because the story starts long before Miami. Alexandra Eala was born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City, Philippines, making her just 20 years old right now. She is multilingual, speaking English, Spanish, and Filipino.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Eala.
She calls calderita her favorite comfort food and prefers matcha over coffee.
I don't know how to ride a bike.
She cites
Second,
Maria Sharapova as
I
a
love,
major influence on her playing
sitcoms
style.
Like Friends.
And she has been training relentlessly since before most of the world even knew her name existed. She began competing on the ITF circuit at just 14 years old in 2020. By 2022, she had claimed her first ITF title and, perhaps more importantly as a sign of what was coming, she won the Junior US Open title that same year, which sent a clear signal to the tennis world that something extraordinary was developing quietly in Mallorca. The grind from 2022 through 2024 was exactly that, a grind. The main draw appearances at the bigger tournaments were brief. The qualifying rounds at Grand Slams ended in disappointment. The ranking climbed slowly and then stalled. It would have been easy for anyone watching from the outside to wonder if the junior title was as good as it was ever going to get. And yet Eala kept working. Kept showing up. Kept refining her game at the Nadal Academy, a facility built on the belief that hard work and discipline will eventually overcome every obstacle placed in front of you. And then Miami happened, and suddenly the entire world realized this was never a question of if, it was only ever a question of when. After Miami, the doors blew wide open. Eala made her Grand Slam main draw debut at the French Open and then at Wimbledon. And then came the US Open, where she made history again, becoming the first Filipino player to win a Grand Slam main draw match in the entire Open era when she defeated Clara Tauson in the first round. First Filipino to break into the top 100. First Filipino to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal. First Filipino to win a Grand Slam match. 3 historic firsts in the same calendar year. At 19 years old. Carrying the weight of an entire nation on her shoulders while somehow still managing to look completely unbothered on the tennis court. She then traveled to Guadalajara in Mexico and won her first WTA 125 title, defeating Punna Udvardy in the final, yet another first for Philippine tennis. The firsts kept coming, one after another, like she was collecting them and placing them gently into the history books. And through it all, Eala maintained this remarkable composure, this ability to speak about her journey with a self-awareness that goes so far beyond her years. Andy Roddick, after interviewing her on his Served podcast, said the conversation was a lesson in self-awareness, that sitting there at 43 years old, having spent his entire life in the tennis world, he genuinely could not believe how pragmatic and grounded she was, especially given the full storm of popularity and responsibility that had suddenly landed on her shoulders. When a former US Open champion who has seen absolutely everything this sport has to offer tells you that a 20-year-old has more self-awareness than he did at the same age, You are looking at something genuinely rare and genuinely precious. And that popularity is real. It is massive. It is the kind of popularity that cannot be manufactured in a marketing meeting or built through social media strategy alone. At the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix in Stuttgart just this past April, it was Eala, not any of the 7 top 10 players who were competing in that very same tournament, who stole the spotlight entirely during fan engagement sessions. Event organizers themselves labeled her autograph the most sought after in the entire tournament village. 7 of the world's top 10 players were inside that building, and the person with the longest line of fans waiting patiently just to meet her for 1 second was a 20-year-old from Quezon City. That is not athletic success alone. That is star power. And star power of that magnitude is born, not made. Now let us talk about 2026, because the story is very much still being written, and it is getting better with every chapter. Eala started her 2026 season in extraordinary fashion, reaching the semifinals at the Auckland Open in both singles and doubles. She then made her Australian Open debut, a learning experience, an exit in the first round, but an experience nonetheless. She kept building. She reached the quarterfinals at the Abu Dhabi Open and then the quarterfinals of the Dubai Championships, where she pushed Coco Gauff. By the time Indian Wells came around, she was playing the best tennis of her career. She reached the 4th round there, and that result pushed her to a career-high world ranking of number 29, officially making her the highest-ranked Filipino tennis player in WTA Tour history, a record that belongs entirely to her. Number 29 in the world. 14 months earlier she was ranked 140th. The trajectory is not just impressive. It is almost unprecedented in the modern era of women's tennis.
I'm trying to look at shorts there. So ngayon, I'm preparing for Australian Open 2024. I'll be joining the qualifying.
At the Miami Open this year, the expectations were enormous. She was returning to the site of her magical 2025 run, a tournament where she is now genuinely beloved by the crowd and by the tennis community worldwide. She spoke openly to reporters about what it felt like to have become famous, saying it was a little surprising at first because it is hard to see yourself as that famous when you have just been yourself your whole life. But that once she got past the initial shock of it, she truly learned to enjoy it because the atmosphere with a full stadium cheering for you is something genuinely and profoundly different. That quote is so wonderfully honest and grounded. She is not performing humility for the cameras. She is actually navigating all of this enormous change in real time, and doing it with remarkable grace. She beat Magda Linette in the round of 32 before running into Karolina Muchova in the round of 16, where the Czech player proved too strong on the day and won convincingly. It was a tough result, and it cost Eala significant ranking points because she had that semifinal from last year to defend. The clay season has started with some honesty baked in, which is worth acknowledging. At the Linz Open in Austria, Eala picked up a first-round win over Julia Grabher before falling to former French Open champion Elena Ostapenko in the round of 16. Then came Stuttgart, where she ran into Leylah Fernandez in the opening round and lost in straight sets. 2 early exits on clay, which mirrors what happened during the 2025 clay season and confirms that this surface remains her most significant challenge on tour right now. Clay demands a different kind of patience, a different kind of shot-making, longer rallies, and much greater physical endurance over multiple hours. Eala's game is built on aggression and pace. Clay slows everything down and rewards the grinders, the counterpunchers, the players who love nothing more than a 5-minute baseline war. That is not her natural habitat. Not yet. But here's what the doubters are missing. Eala has identified this entire stretch, Madrid, Rome, and then Roland Garros, as a deliberate measuring stick, specifically designed to test whether the work she has been doing on clay at the Nadal Academy is beginning to translate in match conditions under real pressure. And if there is one academy on this entire planet built for exactly that kind of development, for teaching a young player how to battle on clay, how to grind, How to find a way to win even when the conditions are completely against you. It is the Nadal Academy. The man who won Roland Garros 14 times built that place with his own hands and his own philosophy. Eala has been inside that system for years now. At some point, those clay lessons have to click. At some point, the surface that has felt like a wall starts to feel like a door. And Roland Garros. This is the grand prize. As a top 100 player with a current ranking of 45, Eala has direct entry into all 4 Grand Slams, including the French Open. Last year was her first ever appearance at Roland Garros, and she lost in the first round. This year, she arrives as a player with a career high of 29, with 12 additional months of experience at the top level, with the scars and the lessons of that first Roland Garros appearance behind her rather than ahead of her. The French Open is where legacies are built. It is where champions announce themselves to history. And there is an entire generation of Filipino tennis fans who are starting to dare to dream about what might happen if Eala finds her clay legs and arrives at Roland Garros with momentum and belief and that forehand, loaded and ready. Think about what this young woman has already achieved, and she has not even turned 21 yet. She trains at the academy of the greatest clay court player who ever lived. She has beaten 3 Grand Slam champions in the same tournament as a wildcard. She is the first Filipino in history to be ranked inside the world's top 100, top 50, and top 30. She won a Grand Slam match at the US Open. She won a WTA 125 title. She reached the WTA 1000 semifinal. She holds a 4-3 career record against players ranked in the top 10 at the time of their match. And she turns 21 in May. The best years of her career, by any statistical and historical measure, have not even arrived yet. Eala has spoken about what all of this means beyond the trophies and the rankings points, saying she would love to think she makes a difference, that the only way she can truly give back to her country is to inspire change and positive change, to inspire people to pick up a racket, to watch tennis, to discover women's tennis. That is not a press release. That is not something a publicist handed her before she walked into her room. That is a young woman who genuinely understands that what she is doing on a tennis court every single week has ripple effects that travel far beyond any scoreboard. Every Filipino kid who sees Eala step onto a Grand Slam court now knows it is possible. Every parent watching her carry herself with poise and intelligence and heart knows that this is the kind of person worth looking up to. That kind of inspiration does not show up in the rankings. But it matters more than almost anything that does. The road ahead is packed with opportunity and packed with challenge in equal measure. Madrid and Rome are next, 2 of the biggest clay events on the entire WTA calendar, both WTA 1000 tournaments with no points to defend and everything to gain. Then comes Paris and Roland Garros, where Eala steps onto the red clay for the second time in her career, this time with experience, ranking, and belief that did not exist when she walked onto that court for the first time in 2025. Then comes Wimbledon, the tournament Eala has singled out as her personal favorite of all the Grand Slams, and then the US Open, where she will look to go deeper than the second round and build on the history she made there a year ago. Alexandra Eala is not a hype story. She is not a viral moment that flared up and will fade when the next big thing comes along. She is a generational talent who has put in the work since she was a child, who packed her bags and moved to Spain at 13 years old to train under the best coaching infrastructure in the world, who has handled the full weight of national expectation with a grace that leaves veterans of this sport completely speechless. The story is not over. The story is barely getting started. And the best chapters, the ones we will still be talking about for decades, are still being written right now, one match at a time. So if you believe in this journey, if you have been watching every match and feeling every win and every loss like it belongs to you personally, then you are in exactly the right place. Hit that like button right now and show the world that Philippine tennis deserves its flowers. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think Alexandra Eala's true ceiling actually is, top 10, top 5, a Grand Slam title? There are no wrong answers here, only dreams, and right now not a single one of them feels too big. And if you are new to Court Vision Plus, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell, because we are going to be with Alexandra Eala every step of the way. From the clay courts of Madrid to the red dirt of Roland Garros to whatever history she decides to write next. The princess has only just begun her reign.
Congratulations, Alex.
Thank you.
How fun was it to play at the center court?
Super fun. It was
Yeah.
huge and the atmosphere was just incredible.
Yeah, I saw you produce